when people say.
Good evening, everyone.
Charming, doing my thing.
We're so excited to have you all here today. This is a great turnout, which gives us life because, as we all know, the environment, there's no word to describe how important it is for all of us. We kind of pulled this together because we were a little frustrated when we were talking, and I'll introduce people here shortly. With the reports coming out that the climate change is happening much quicker than what we thought, and that we're going to be much sooner to the point of no return. So we decided to do it. We're excited. I'm here with my Windsor Action climate friends, Liz Yetman and Susan Miller, and with Representative Christine Palm from Essex. And do you have another one, or just Essex?
Chester, Deep River, and Haddam, and Essex. 4 towns.
Wow. And she is vice chair of the aging committee at the
environmental.
Environment.
That one's here to stay.
She's the chair.
And I'm aging, so. Yeah, he's on.
It is on?
Yep. You can hear us, right? Yeah. I think this is more for the TV.
Gotcha.
So we're just really excited to have you all here. And I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves a little bit and say a little bit about why they're here, why they do, what Action Climate does, the group, etc. So will you two, whichever way you want to head it off?
I can start? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Then I'll know and not to say something else.
Sure. So my name is Liz Yetman. I'm with Windsor Climate Action. I was also on the task force with the town, the Clean Energy and Sustainability Task Force. I've just been very passionate about working on climate issues for a while now. And when some folks in town said, "Hey, we need a group of people who are going to work on this," I was in. So,
Thanks, Liz. Susan Miller, one of the original members, along with Liz, with the Windsor Climate Action Group. I think we kind of came to a point and we're just really worried about nothing happening, and decided that maybe action at the local level would be the way to go, because I had tried to do stuff kind of nationally, signing petitions and calling whoever, but it just didn't feel like much was happening there. So kind of worked the way down and decided to just work at the local level. So we've been doing this we started right before the pandemic. So, we kind of got off on a little bit of a difficult foot there, but hopefully we're getting a little more momentum, and obviously there's a lot of issues that we need to address. So that's why we're here.
Okay. And I'm going to do a couple of introductions before I pass it over to you, Christine. We do have some elected officials here today, and I just want to recognize them, that they're here to listen to us also and can help us with anything that we are doing here in Windsor. We have Ayanna Taylor from the Board of Ed. Yay. Leonard Lockhart, Vice Chair of the Board of Ed, and David Fury, President of the Board of Ed. So we thank them for being here, and all of you. Now I'm going to hand it over to Rep. Palm.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Board of Ed people, for being here and for your work. It's such a hard time to be in public service, and boards of ed are on the front line of an awful lot of let's just call it uncivil behavior these days, and I thank you sincerely. Thank you, young people. I see you back there for coming. It is your future that we're talking about, so I'm so glad that you're here. And my dear friend and colleague, Jane Garibay, who does such a wonderful job, and I'm thrilled to be with you, even though this is not my district. You can't vote for me. But everything that Jane and I do, and all of our colleagues, affects all of you together. The weird thing about state government, to your point about the national versus the hyper-local, that is your municipal, we're somewhere in the middle. And we look to the left, I don't mean politically left, we look to our municipals to help them. We also look to our congressionals and liaise with them. So as state officials, we're kind of in the middle or the epicenter of a lot of legislation, which is an exciting place to be. So while we get elected by our district, everything we do affects the entire state, unlike your municipal leaders. It's a little bit of a funny world that we live in. One of my passions is getting more people involved in the legislative process, and so Jane asked me to speak on that tonight. I'm not sure what the format is or how you want to do this.
Well, first I'd like to talk a little bit about this past session was, for most of us, pretty disappointing.
Yes.
I can remember times when poor Rep. Palm had to leave the session room because she was so upset when bills were killed and not, passed forward, because she is very passionate.
By which she means, when I said to her, yeah, it was a tough session, I kind of lost my cool a couple of times. She said, I know, honey, you were in tears constantly. I was like, oh, you noticed? Okay, I thought I got away with that.
But it was disappointing, and if you could talk about what did we pass?
Yes, yes.
And
well,
what
that's actually in
it's
my.
in?
It's
okay,
all,
perfect.
I'd love to do it with the visuals,
Yep,
just because
absolutely.
my own memory isn't as great. So before I launch into that, or when I do, we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want you two folks, please, to interrupt constantly and add whatever I'm saying.
Yeah.
So should we just launch into
Yeah,
it?
let's
I think
go.
the most important thing, the takeaway that I hope, is exactly this. What we do affects every aspect of your life. And these are just a few of the things that matter a lot to me that I'm working on personally. And regardless of where you stand on the issue, let's just say you're pro-choice, let's say you're not in favor of abortion rights, wherever you stand, it's not my job or Jane's to tell you how to feel or what to believe, but it is our job to bring those concerns to our colleagues, and then ultimately for us to vote the way we feel is the most moral and intellectually and financially responsible way. So here's just a few things that you might say, oh, I thought that was a national issue. No, it's hyper-local. Book banning is happening on a local issue. Since the overturn of Roe versus Wade, states now have the power, again, pro or con, to dictate reproductive rights. We passed a lot of mental health screening for young people this past session. So to Jane's point, it was kind of a bust from the environment perspective, although we did do a lot of really good things. And I want to give you a shout out, because as aging chair, she had a lot of success. I didn't. So some years we do better in one area than the other, or COVID was, so all-consuming that year was all about vaccinations and whatnot. So forgive me if you know all this. I'm always surprised how few people, even those of a certain age like me who had civics as kids, we forget how a bill gets passed. And I don't want to belabor it. But the reason it's important is everything highlighted in yellow is where you guys can have an influence. So when you say, rightly, not a lot is being done nationally and I'm frustrated, so I want to work locally, I want to encourage all of you to think about that mid-range, which is your state government, okay? So legislators like me and Jane introduce bill ideas. A lot of those ideas come from you. I introduced 3 or 4 bills that were brought to me actually by high school kids. Then we have these nonpartisan staff who draft the language, who vet it for how much it's going to cost, for legality, blah, blah. You can't be part of that. We're not even a part of that. It goes to the Committee of Cognizance, by which we mean there are 20 or 25 committees. As we've mentioned, she's chair of the Aging Committee. So all bills having to do with pension reform for seniors, home care health for elders would be in Jane's bucket. Anything having to do with the environment, which also includes the DEEP and the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, comes under the Environment Committee, for example. So gun safety, gun control, rape, domestic violence, those all go under judiciary. We all sit on 3 or 4 committees. So we can vote on those other bills, but as chairs and vice chairs, we're in charge of our own committees. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the committee chairs will screen bills, which means they decide which ones to raise. This is where you can contact your legislator, so you know that Jane, who's your senator, Anwar? Or no? McCrory, okay. So you guys know how to contact her. Your senator is Doug McCrory. This is where you can contact them and say, hey, I understand that there's a bill on XYZ. I'm in favor of it, I'm opposed to it. Then that helps the committee chairs in the screening. It's too boring, but there are 6 people. The ranking members are the minority party. In Connecticut right now, that's the Republicans, because the Democrats have majority at the House and the Senate. So ranking simply means the party that's not in power. And each committee has a Senate and a House co-chair, and then a Senate and House vice chair. All 4 of those people are Democrats because we have the majority. And then the ranking members are the Senate and House Republicans. So there are 6 people on the screening committees. And then we decide which bills are going to see the light of day. Every year, 3,000 or so bills get introduced by people like me and Jane. I introduced 12 bills a couple years ago, and I think 8 last year. Of those, 300 get advanced. So most of them die right at this stage, number 4. So if you don't advocate hard for that bill, it's going to die right away. Of those 300, last year we passed 261. So you can see from 3,000 to 250, let's call it. Number 5, public hearings are held. In red, your voice is needed here the most. Public hearings are when our committees listen to the public to tell us yay or nay.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, please do.
So on the Aging Committee, part of our success in passing bills was the amount of people that came out to the hearings. We had union workers, we had families of nursing home residents, hundreds really came out and they testified. Some write letters, they don't want to get up and speak in a hearing. There's many different ways, but that voice is crucial to getting that, because the chair really has the ultimate power. Most include their vice chair, but in the end, that one person decides whether that bill moves forward, gets a hearing, etc.
That's all true. In addition to which, I would say the numbers don't tell the whole story. So again, during COVID, the anti-vax community, and some people in this audience might be among that, so I don't want to insult anybody, but the anti-vaxxers came out in force, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and they were extremely vocal. Connecticut passed strict vaccination regulations, which is why we were for a long time, the safest state in the whole country, despite their turnout.
But they got it so that kindergarten up that were already there were grandfathered in.
Exactly.
So it wasn't like, okay, you all have to go out now. It was only new kids coming into the school system,
That's
and
right.
that's what they achieved.
That's right. That's a really good point. So it was a compromise bill where people did listen to them, and then we worked out a compromise. Okay. So the bill goes to the House or the Senate. Depends, if a senator introduces the bill, it starts in the Senate, then goes to the House. Jane and I are both in the House of Representatives. So if we do a bill, it starts in the House and then goes on to the Senate. It has to get put on the calendar. That means the list of bills that run. Here again, it's in yellow because you can say, I testified, remember going back here, public hearing. I was there on number 5, I testified. The bill went on to the floor of the House or the Senate. And here again, you can make yourself known. So this is a picture, sorry, this is geared toward my district, so I'm in it.
That's fine.
So here's a thing about dangerous working conditions for, I think, nurses.
Oops.
And you can see Richard Blumenthal, our state senator, was there. There's Sauron Moore, who's a senator. So these were people who worked in the healthcare field who were, you can see it was sort of at the end of COVID. There's one guy there with a mask, or a couple people with masks. And we were doing a press conference on a certain bill. So these people all came out to talk in front of the media, to get attention. So you can be involved in number 8, which I'm calling internal lobbying, which is talking it up within the Capitol building. Okay, so great. The bill has a hearing. The chairs have screened it. It's moving along down the pipeline. It gets brought out on the House or the floors, House or Senate floor, we argue the bill. Jane did a wonderful job arguing for her bills. The interesting thing is, again, because of the way we're in the majority, and that could change, someday if the Democrats are in the minority, we will be the ones asking the questions. But the majority brings out the bills, and the minority party peppers us with questions, and often there are filibusters, which is the main reason we didn't pass enough environmental legislation, which I'll get to. It's debated, quote unquote, and this is where, as Jane said, when the AARP people show up with red t-shirts, they're noticed. So you want to get up to the Capitol at this point and make some noise. Passes one chamber, moves on to the other chamber. Here again. Okay, great. I got a bill through the House, an environmental bill, after a 4-hour filibuster. It would have created a decarbonization roadmap to help state agencies. Thank you for your enthusiastic nod. Yay. And it passed the House with one Republican vote. We passed it. It never got called in the Senate because the Senate chair didn't like the bill, so it died. So we have to vote. We have to reintroduce it next year. Okay. So it gets voted on again. If it gets changed at all or amended, I'm talking fast because I don't want to bore you. It goes back to the original chamber, and you start all over again.
But that's why it is important to, if you are able to, it all depends on who your ranking member is. In aging, I actually have a really good ranking member. And so he got the Republicans on board. Our bills passed unanimous in both chambers because we had that cooperation both in the Senate and the House. But that does not happen with every committee.
And that's partly due to your leadership. It's also partly due to the fact that you'd have to be a really special kind of idiot to hate elderly, and it's not
Right, it is true.
It's really, you kind of like raise your hand if you don't care about your grandmother. So, Eric, are you in this picture?
No.
No,
No.
but that's the event you were at.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I guess I cropped you out. No offense. So here's a bill signing. The governor came out to Windsor. Jane was here too. Jane
I was behind you.
I cropped you out
can see the little
too.
green. I'm right behind you.
All right, Jane's in the green.
Yeah.
And this is the ceremonial bill signing of the PFAS legislation, which protects our firefighters from using this cancer-causing foam. So that's how a bill gets made. Okay, here's recent environmental wins. I won't go through them one by one, but if you have a specific question, I'm happy to answer it. Again, sorry, the ones in yellow are bills that I led on or wrote. So this is geared again toward my people. So that doesn't mean they're more important bills. It just means those are the things that I cared the most about and had some success with. And these are all good bills, but none of them addressed climate change or waste management in a significant way. We saved the horseshoe. Oops. Here are a list of bills that didn't pass. I'm calling them unfinished business, going back to the drawing board, trying to get folks like you to help so that next year we can do them. So here's all the bills that I think we really fell down on. Neonicotinoids are pesticides that affect pollinators. All of you pollinator bee and butterfly freaks. That's a really important bill. Rodenticides affects raptors because you put this stuff in your house, the mouse eats it, gets sick, crawls out of your house, gets eaten by a raptor, and then the raptor can't produce because the eggs crack and it's endangering our hawks. And so you can look through on this plastics recycling. Somebody asked me, Elaine, was it you? Asked about why do we have such a terrible recycling situation. I tried to get a bill to require in Connecticut products to be sold with a clearer, this was a bill, by the way, a 16-year-old kid came to me with this idea. He said, this intersecting triangles code 5.3, nobody knows what that means. Right. How many of you can look at a piece of plastic and understand that an intersecting triangle with a 3 is not recyclable, but a 5 is? No, nobody. And I didn't know that. Right. So what I was agitating for was a code that had a big circle with an R or an R with a thing through it. And compostable, C, or not compostable. all through Europe. We all understand when we're in Europe that, no parking with a P, whatever. I ran into terrible pushback from the plastics manufacturer. Again, not enough citizens showed up, so the bill died. And I'm not saying that to guilt trip you. I'm saying that because the reality is we need those voices at the Capitol. So how do you do that? I apologize for the weird spacing on this. In writing, you can write testimony. It's the least impactful, but it's still valuable, especially in large numbers. I think any state legislator who claims to read every single piece of testimony that comes in on all 3,000 bills is just flat out lying. There aren't hours in the day. But we read our constituents' bills. Testimony. So if you write testimony, let Jane know, and then when you testify, she can call on you and make a point of really reading it. Everything now is hybrid. The public hearings are hybrid. We can't vote by hybrid. We have to be there physically, but the public hearings, you can come in person or testify on Zoom. It's much more effective than number one, and the most effective is number three. Show up physically at a public hearing. It does take dedication. You have to sit there for hours and hours and hours. The most moving and effective testimony I ever had was from a 12-year-old girl who got permission from her parents to set her alarm for 2 a.m, and she testified on Zoom in her PJs. She was in the 8th grade on an environment bill. And believe me, you could hear a pin drop. Here's a really simple sample of testimony. It does not have to be deathless prose, you guys. It does not have to win you a Pulitzer. You do not have to have a PhD in macrobiology from Yale. You just have to say, I'm so-and-so, I'm in favor of this bill, here's why, please vote it up or vote it down. This is real testimony from a person in my town.
And it's better to be 3 sentences than
Yes.
to use those standards where you just click on them and send them. I'll answer those if they're in my district, but it's also just a copy and paste answer. But if you write to me and say, I'm doing this, but I will answer you more, more personal.
I think I might have, I forget, because I think I brought the wrong slideshow, I do have a slide proving why that is not helpful. Okay, why you should testify at public hearings. This is what the room looks like. This young man on the left in the flannel, you can see his cheeks are bright red. He was terrified. He's one of my constituents. He's a freshman in college. And over on the right is the committee, the Environment Committee, and you see him up on Zoom because, again, hybrid. All right, here's why we need you. Vice chairs take over for chairs. Who's your vice chair? Your
Mary Fortier.
Okay, so some of these hearings can be 15, 17, 20 hours long. And because of COVID and now the world of Zoom, they're longer than ever, and we have to stay to the bitter end. So vice chairs take over for chairs to give them a dinner break. I was leading the bill on this particular night, February 25th, 2022, and I printed out the speakers list because I'm not great at toggling with the technology, and I coded who the people were. And this is all a matter of public record, so I'm not violating anybody's privacy. The blue lines indicate state officials. So it's either employees of the DEEP, or here's Jamie Foster, whom Jane mentioned a minute ago, I think. She's one of our colleagues. Trenae McGee is a state rep. So anybody in blue is an elected official who chose to run for office and be there. It's our job. Orange is paid lobbyists for the industry. Green is what I would call white hat lobbyists. They are environmentalists who represent the Sierra Club, the River Conservancy, the Aquarium, the Connecticut Parks and Forests. These are people whose job it is to defend the environment, but they're also lobbyists, but they're pro-environment. Okay, yellow. Guess what yellow is? So this is that night. This is a very typical, very typical public hearing. 120 people, 19 of whom were government, 27 were professional environmentalists, 44 were anti-environmental manufacturing lobbyists trying to kill the bill, and 16 were people like you. So out of 120 people, 16 people were what I would call real people. So you can see how bad it is and how much we need you. And this is completely random, very typical bill. The bill was extended producer responsibility for tires, meaning if you're going to create and manufacture a hard-to-recycle product like a tire or a propane tank, you should be part of the solution. You, Johnny Jones Tire Company, should help us recycle. That's called extended producer responsibility. 16 people said yes, and whatever 120 minus 16 is said no. Okay, so how do you find out what's what? Here's our website. It's not interactive. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that part. But really counterintuitively, and this fries me, guess what you click on to find out bills? You'll never guess. Bulletin. I know. It's almost like they don't want you to show up, but I didn't say that. Okay? So you click on the bulletin, and here's what you get. So this is our weekly calendar. Again, this is for April 17th, 21st, 2023. And you'll see public hearing in judiciary on Friday. This will tell you press conference with Jane Garibay in such and such a room at such and such a time. Committee meetings are when the committees vote on whether to advance the bill. So this is a typical thing. And then there's like ceremonial stuff, the St. Barbara Greek Orthodox Church Fest, whatever, okay? But that's where you find out, okay, Judiciary Committee has a public hearing. Then you go to the next click, and this is the important one. You can view the agenda, and that's where it tells you what bills are on that agenda. So can I just see a quick show of hands? How many people in this room believe in aid in dying, or what we call compassionate care, end of care? Yeah, I figured. Okay. So that's a bill, for example, that we needed people to show up and testify on, and that will be listed. And you'll see, 10 a.m. Monday, October, or not October, but February, blah, blah. And then you can click View Testimony and Speaker Order, and that's how you figure out when you're going to be up. So my 12-year-old girl, I told her, go to sleep, honey. You're going to be up between 1 and 3. Set your alarm for 1:30, and there she was at 2 o'clock. And your state rep will do that for you to help you be heard. Okay, here's what Jane was just talking about. Collectivist or activist and environmental groups are the worst. I don't want to say the worst offenders. They are the most avid users of these things. So when you put your name on a petition from oneclickpolitics.com or myvoiceamerica.com, this is what happens to my inbox. And all it does is piss me off. So this is literally, same thing, grassrootsmessage.com. Please oppose House Joint Resolution 261. I have no idea what that even was. It went on and on and on, and I have to sit there.
You're talking hundreds we'll get. And we have to click on each one and check to see, is it in our district?
Yes. And if it's in our district, then she's nicer than I am. She answers. I'm so mad. But I've been at this longer than she has. So I'm just like, no, I'm not even. And so, okay, so 389 conversations. Guess what, you guys?
Oh, I didn't know you could do that permanently.
Yeah, I'll show you. Or you have your aid. Yeah. So 389 was in 1 hour. I did this every hour, on the hour, for days. So please don't use those things. If you expect people like me and Jane to spend 17 hours of our time listening to testimony, respectfully, but with a little bit of crabbiness in my voice, I will say to you, you can spend 5 minutes and write me a real email. Because otherwise you don't really care that much. That's what I keep telling people. Clicktivist makes it easy for you, it makes it really hard for us, and it's very alienating, and you can see why. Okay, last slide. Yay, bill got passed. And there's great joy in the land. And here's just a selfie of us. Jane wasn't in this. Jane, this wasn't a bill, I guess, that you worked on. And this is just me and some of my colleagues, joyful. Right? You know this feeling when you get something over the line. Okay, that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry that was a little bit longer than I thought. But Does that give you an overview of how many points of intersection there are where you can really help us out? There's so many ways for your voice to be
I have a
heard.
question. So when you have your folks who are testifying in person, and 44 of the 100 are paid lobbyists, anti, like, do you weigh that equally with a individual who comes in, who's shaking in the papers, quaking?
I'll answer for Christine.
Please do.
She doesn't pay attention because she is an environmentalist. She wants to save our planet, and she's passionate about it. So I am sure if I know Christine, she looks at those and says, "Meh."
Thanks,
Right?
Jane, for outing me. She's wrong. I pay rapt attention. I take them, no. It's their job. I listen, I ask them questions, but, you know, here's a typical exchange, right? So the plastics manufacturer came and said, your bill is too onerous on us. We don't have time. And I said, sorry, I'm 67. I've been waiting since I was 16 for you people to get your shit together. How much longer do you want me to wait? Because we can't wait any longer. So if you really have a solution, why didn't you do it yet? The electric car has been around since 1880. Not 1980.
1980.
No,
1880? Wow.
the model of the first electric car was invented in 1880. And in 1960, GM had a fantastic electric car, but decided to can it because they made more money from the fossil fuel industry. So when I hear we don't have the infrastructure to support EV charging stations, I'm like, you've had more than 100 years to figure it out. So don't keep telling me I'm impatient, because yes, I'm impatient as hell. Because
But
we're
you
running out
said
of
something the
time.
other day that it's time to be bold. It is. You know, we pussyfoot around and we try to, you know, work across the aisle. We try to do all these things, but time is running out. And I know you guys in Action Climate feel.
Well, so the big question is, you know, what are the bills we're going to work on? You know, what are we coming up on that's going to focus on climate? Because that's the big issue. I know plastics is also a really big issue that we have to address, but you know, climate is our existential crisis, and so what are we looking at?
And let me add on to that before you answer. I think when you talk about wanting people to come out, I am not excited about coming out over some small little thing. Like, whatever, it's not going to do anything. But if you were to say, okay, we have a bill, we're going to eliminate fossil fuel use in the state in 10 years, I'd be like, finally. And I would come out and support that. And I think a lot more people would have more enthusiasm for that and show up. So that's the question.
So here's the dilemma that we face. The zero carbon roadmap bill would have done exactly that. When a bill is too ambitious or has too many moving parts, it's more likely to fail. So Jane was saying sort of half jokingly about we saved horseshoe crabs. That might not sound important, and I know you weren't.
No, and I do mean it. It's important.
You
I was
weren't. I know you weren't
thrilled,
throwing shade.
And it took like 5 years to get that passed.
Yes, horseshoe crabs are actually incredibly important to the ecosystem, but it was a chunk that we could handle in one. And again, nobody hates horseshoe crabs. I mean, they joke about them, but they don't hate them. People hate giving up their cars, and they hate environmentalists, and there's a lot of denial about environmentalists. And the severity of the carbon problem. And I stood up there for 4 hours while certain people said, carbon is good because plants eat carbon, which is true. And we're made of carbon, which is true. Therefore, we need more carbon in the air. Not true. So we are not allowed to argue. We can't say, well, you stupid turd. Of course that's not true. And of course I'm dying to say. And
You're all going to be watching those sessions to hear Christine.
Oh my God. I'm getting texts from people like Jane saying, calm down, take a breath. I don't, you know, you have resting bitch face. Pull it together. My husband watches at home and he's, please, Lord, make her stop. But the filibusters go on. So if the bill is too controversial, e.g. effective, it will get more pushback. So to answer your question about next year, we're working on it now. I have to convince my chair, remember I'm only the vice chair, I have to convince my chairs to raise these bills. So what you can do right now in this moment is you can send all your good ideas to Jane and she will send them to me. And I will try to incorporate them into the bill that I'm writing. And what I'm looking at is, you're hearing this first, 3 omnibus bills in 3 different committees. Because again, it's too boring and complicated and insider baseball, but some chairs are better than others at getting bills passed. So the more I can spread the responsibility around, the better, because I don't enjoy the harmony that Jane described. So I have to try to work around the system by getting the bill through another committee. So I'm trying to put things into buckets that will require other committees to raise them.
I also think that we
make sense?
have to have a change of attitude, though, because if you look, and no, they are not communists in Spain, France, and some of these European countries. They may be a social democracy, whatever, but they are elected. In Spain, you have 4 bins underneath your sink, every single person. They all recycle. I'll call on you. Is that you, Nathan?
Oh, yeah.
Give me 1 minute, and then I'll call on you. So they all recycle. Then you have to take it to the corner where the bigger bins are, and they all do it without question.
Complaint.
Windmills, they're second in the world in wind power, and they're beautiful. Here they go to put up a windmill in Vermont, and I mean, people are like nuts about it. Just the 5 we put in out on Block Island, and I was underneath one of those. You don't even hear it. There's a whole ecosystem of fish, like a coral reef grows there. But we just don't, and we're living, I think, in times where I can do what I want. If I want to go 100 miles on the highway, I'm going to do it. And if I want to do this, I'm going to do it. And if I want to throw nip bottles out my window, I'm going to do it, because they're still everywhere. So how do we change that narrative? And that's why I understand the carbon, and I support that 100%, and it should be our main priority. But those little things, why don't we recycle textiles in Windsor? Why don't we have a bag? In Windsor Locks, they do. They have textile bags, and so clothes, whatever, that aren't good to go to someone else, or old diapers or underwear, that's where they go.
You're in, Becker.
I had asked that question, and I was told that there's a trailer at the transfer station for that.
There is.
However, you have to go across the mud and ice and snow if you want to use it.
And you're wasting gas,
And
the environment.
people do that. And I can't reach it.
Yeah.
Now, I have pictures of the very nice boxes for textiles. This is material that you're going to give to people because they need a sweater, and this is whatever. It's junk, it's shoes, it's rods, whatever. And in South Windsor, there's 2 places at schools with the boxes. They're lit, they're on tarmac, they're at the schools, so that.
Leah, I'm just going to ask, do you have a question that you wanted to
I
ask?
want to know
Why
why we can't have
we can't
Oh,
have
okay.
that.
Why can't we have nice things?
Right.
Yeah,
But-
we do have some, but they're not lit. A lot of times they're pouring out because they don't empty them. There's that Stop and Shop. Archer Memorial AME Zion Church has textiles. So there are some, but I agree, we can do more.
And ask your municipal leaders. That's a local
That's
level
who
thing.
she asked, I think.
Oh, okay. How about your guy in the back?
Yeah, Nathan, will you stand in? Nathan is also on our Board of Education.
Yeah, so my question, what you said, Representative Palm, really interested me. It was, you mentioned strategy, and I just wanted to know if you want to speak more about that. I know you mentioned about going through different chairs, and would it be the same kind of bill in 3 different ways, or would it be 3 different bills in different ways?
No, and thank you. That's a great question. This is really premature because the answer to the question is I'm working on it now. So session starts in February, right? Every other year is we go short, long, short, long. So this coming year is February to May. I'm trying to get my bills written, vetted, approved, drafted by all those nonpartisan people in time. So right now I have nothing to show you or to tell you because I'm literally was working on it, before I came up here. But in essence, what I'm hoping is to do an omnibus bill. That's a bill with a lot of moving parts that covers a big, to your point, big ideas. One would be through the Transportation Committee on carbon reduction, public transport, highways, electric vehicle chargers, anything having to do with the transportation sector, which is the major source of carbon in our climate. Another one would be through energy and technology, and that would be about solar incentives, carbon neutral schools, everything having to do with green buildings, reducing our carbon footprint in construction. And then the third bucket, which I would lead, would be, I'm laughingly calling it plants and animals. The herbicides, the coastal resilience, the protection of ecosystems, a tree cutting protocol. If you've driven down any highway in Connecticut and you're devastated by all those trees that are cut, there's nobody, coordinating those efforts. So I'm hoping, sorry, was your name Nathan? Yeah, Nathan, I'm hoping to be able to take all the good ideas that you all have, that my colleagues have, and figure out how to stick it in one of those buckets. Because you're right, if we do nothing except protect shoreline birds in the Naugatuck Valley, great bill, but come on, jellyfish, we're missing the big picture, which is climate chaos. I don't even say climate change anymore, I call it climate chaos. So you've got all this flooding. Did your town have bad flooding?
We had our farms along the river.
The farms.
Did, yeah.
So there's a really good example. Right, so the farmers in the Connecticut River Valley were devastated, as you all know. It was a crappy year for peaches, as a result, strawberries. We had a freak deep freeze on May 17th because of climate chaos. And then just when they were replanting, recovering from that deep freeze in May, the floods came. Everything came down the Connecticut River from Vermont and wiped them out all over again. So the state, I'm the farmers in my district, I'm trying to help them get federal funds to help with that damage. But that's about climate change. That's not about the farmer goofed and planted too many strawberries or bad luck. Because the bad luck is happening over and over and over again. And our job is to convince the recalcitrant climate deniers that your farmers in your district are going to keep getting wiped out. So there's an economic component to climate change and climate chaos, and my mission is to convince the recalcitrant climate deniers among us that they are harming their towns and their constituents and their businesses. And to keep saying it's unbusiness friendly to be an environmentalist is such horsepucky, because they are being devastated by climate change.
I have a question about that. So when you say you have to convince, you're not going to convince these people that are in denial about what needs to be done. And why do we need to? Because aren't there a majority of people who feel that way? So can you talk to that?
That's the question. Would you like to answer that question, Mrs. Garibay?
So, first of all, people believe what they believe. I had someone reach out to me who believed it wasn't the fires from Canada that was bringing the gray in, that it was President Biden with airplanes across the United States dropping stuff to make cloud cover to lower the temperatures. But the person really believed what they believed. So we could ignore that, let's say that. But when we're in the House of Representatives, if they're going to filibuster over 10 hours, we lose our bills.
So why? Why do we put up with it? Okay.
Yeah.
The reason is, and I'm going to say this as respectfully as I can, the Speaker of the House, who is a smart, wonderful, really good leader, I'm very, very fond of him, he believes in what he calls unlimited debate. He believes in the parliamentary procedure that allows the filibuster. I've argued with him till I'm blue in the face. I don't believe in the filibuster because in 1940, when people were Alphonse Gaston, you go first, no, you go first. We take heaps of crap for hours on end, 8 hours, 15 hours.
So if she's bringing out the bill, that means she's standing there taking that abuse for hours
answering,
and hours and
ridiculous
hours.
questions. And what he could do instead is bang the gavel and what they call the question. Like, okay, you've had your thing, vote, let's vote, let's vote. If we did that in Connecticut, we could be ramming bills through. The state of Minnesota has in its state legislature a Democratic majority of 1, and bills are flying out the door, because that speaker doesn't believe in the filibuster, and he says, okay, time to vote, you've had it, vote. We don't do that in Connecticut. I'm not in charge of that. I'm frustrated by it. I've made my point. Yes, yes. So what happens is...
One bill, we went 24 hours.
Yeah.
24 hours, and that was before COVID, so we had to be on the floor. We couldn't vote from our office or be off. 24 hours.
That's why we make the big bucks, right?
At a part-time job.
Yeah, part-time. So if we in Connecticut did what some other states do, and we got rid of the filibuster, we would be getting many, many, many more bills. But it's not up to me to make that decision. Therefore, the strategy is the two parties work out a deal of how much time they're going to be allotted. And here's where I get frustrated, because anybody who remembers or knows the history of the appeasement of the Nazis, where they kept saying, you know, yes, just don't invade Czechoslovakia, okay, we'll give you this if you don't invade Czechoslovakia, and then we gave it to them, and then they did it anyway. So what ends up happening is I spent 2 weeks working on 2 amendments for my carbon bill to please the other side of the aisle. I rewrote it, I want to say 17 times, 17 different iterations, all of which have to go back to those nonpartisan people, get re-entered into the system, recirculated to my colleagues. Incredibly laborious and time-consuming, and then they all voted against it anyway, after I spent 2 weeks pleasing them by adding the language that they wanted. If we just said, you've made your point, now we're voting, we would, I'd be happier.
Right.
That's the answer.
So how do we convince Ritter to change that?
Let me know when you find out.
So one of the things that was talked about at a meeting I went to with some of your colleagues from West Hartford was, you know, one of the points you made was that, you know, no one says they're against their grandmother, you know, was that language, that we need language on the bills, especially in the naming of the bills, that really changes the outlook on how people feel about them. And, you know, some of the things that might make a difference are to talk about, you know, hardening the grid, resiliency, energy independence, and to start talking about some of the benefits of doing this work and what would accrue to people, because it's incredible. I mean, the benefits.
Messaging is really, really important. We had a bill a couple of years ago called an act concerning the diminishment of particulate matter in volatile substances.
Exactly.
And I renamed it the Connecticut Clean Air Act.
Right.
Because raise your hand if you don't like clean air.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot, you're right, a lot of that is not just messaging, but getting to the crux of it, which is that we are all going to perish, including the very, very wealthy, you know, if we don't get smart about this stuff. And you don't get to keep saying, well, gee, my stocks in Sunoco are going to go up. And a lot of, I mean, who gets rich when old people are taken care of or not taken care of? Nobody. But a lot of people are making a lot of money from the fossil fuel industry, and they don't want to see it change.
And it's changing, but we don't have the time, as we've seen. The younger generation coming up, when I talk to them, you know, like out of Yale, that I've met with students, Loomis, et cetera, and you ask them, what's most important to you? Environment's in their top 2. But if I go to older people when you're door knocking or doing it, I'll say, what's important to you? My taxes.
Yep.
It's just not the same, and how do we change that thing? Eric and then Carol.
The system's broken, but what you're describing is playing within the system. The electric car was invented in 1880. And here we are, still debating about it. We need to use some of the tools that the other side is using. Like, nothing gets done this next legislative calendar, like a budget doesn't get passed, because environmental issues are not number one. And you all are standing up there doing the filibustering and stating, it is climate chaos, there is no alternative. Not doing things will cost us 10x than what you're worried about. The governor needs to be there every day. The leaders of the legislature need to be there. We gotta stop doing the way we're doing it because it's not working.
So unfortunately, we're all preaching to the choir. You guys are here because you care. Jane and I are here because we care. So what needs to happen is you all need to think about your friends and family and your coworkers who live in the districts of the climate deniers, and I can show you how, or she can show you how. You can go on and see the vote record. It's all there for black and white if you pay attention. Bill X, who voted yay, who voted nay. And it does usually split right down party lines with almost no exceptions. Then you live in her district, so you can't threaten not to re-elect her because she's on your side. But if you get people who live in Basra and they go to their elected person, who's one of the biggest filibusterers, if that's a word, and say, we're going to challenge you, we're going to run against you. Young people, please run for office. Please let me and Jane retire and have a break. Please run for office. We have to vote these people out or make it so clear to them, and this is where I'm working with farmers. Farmers tend to be very apolitical. They just want to deal with their crops. Who's trying to help you? Not that guy. Don't elect him again. That's what it's going to take, and that's deep, deep strategy, and the people who are in charge of this are places like the League of Conservation Voters. They keep track of all of this. They're statewide. If any of you want to contact them, they will tell you who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, whom to write to, whom to give up on, whom to support. And there are ways to support people. You can donate to their re-election campaigns even if they're not in your district. I mentioned that 16-year-old boy who's working on the plastics. He lives in Darien. He just loves my work and I love his work, and he's my partner. He can never vote for me.
There's something I don't get there, though. Connecticut has such a democratic, left-leaning majority, but we act like we're in the minority. Where's the disconnect?
Eric, I agree with you 100%. I don't know what to say, honey. I
can't.
can't.
But that's why your voice, when
Yes,
we were talking,
yes.
and I said your voice at the Capitol is important, because you have to be louder than the deniers. You have to be louder. That puts pressure on the legislators, on all of them. It
And
doesn't
on
matter
our
what
leadership.
town you're from.
And
Right.
on our leadership. Half of the battle is getting our leadership to raise bills.
Vote them out.
And what will happen is I'll be told, oh, Pam, that's a talker. A talker is one that is going to create, to which I say, I don't care if it's a talker, it's an important bill. You're the one making the deals. Tell them you've got 1 hour and then shut up. Don't give them 4 hours. Because what happens is if my bill, sorry, I can feel myself getting strident. I can hear my voice. I can hear my voice. I can hear it. I try so hard to calm down. If my bill on XYZ environment takes 4 hours, her bill is going to die. Because we're going to run out of time. And a really good bill out of aging or housing or finance or any of the other millions of bills, I don't want to be the reason that a domestic violence bill failed, because I care about that too. So it pits us against one another because that clock gets tick, tick, tick. And the closer we get to the end of session, which is mandated by law, there's no overtime.
You got to take this show to every district. And I call it a show, don't you think so?
Yeah.
Because if we can get every town Right. But if we get every town activated and excited about this and doing, you know, let's say every one of you writes one letter this next session on an environmental bill, you know, the carbon bill. What if you come out and support that one big bill, but every district is doing it? There's people in every town that care about it. And that's why I say the voice is important. I'll come back over here, but Carol she's had her hand raised.
Just Liz's last comment made me think, I do a lot of traveling, especially throughout the towns of Connecticut, and why don't we have a campaign that talks about on our billboards? New York is in Connecticut billboards, Vermont is on our billboards, all about how beautiful and clean and wonderful states they are to go visit and vacation and move. I just saw one recently, come live with us to New York, upstate New York. How come we don't have a campaign to get those words out to people? When things are out there on a regular basis, it starts to become the norm. And all we ever hear is the negative. So why can't we come up with some kind of campaign to start talking about the good in Connecticut and how we need to make it better?
I love that idea. It's a great idea. The only thing that I spend a lot of my time, Jane brought up about the taxes. A big part of our job is constituent management, and you know, we get bombarded with my child needs such and such services, can you contact DSS and get a wheelchair and blah, blah, blah. So we do a lot of that. I spend hours and hours every day doing that. And what people do not understand is that you cannot say lower my taxes, but also plow my road, educate my kid. I need PPE. During the pandemic, this is an interesting story, and I will be brief, but this is, for me, like the central example of what I now say to people when they complain about their taxes and government bloat. Under Dan Malloy, who was a Democrat, we laid off 17 state workers, either through attrition, you know, they retired and were not refilled, or they were laid off. 17,000. 17,000, I meant, yes. Incomes, Ned Lamont still kept those rolls down because your taxes, you know, you don't want to be paying for all these dead weight people. COVID hits. The COVID, what do you call them? The checks that we got, the not incentive, but stimulus. Thank you. So the stimulus checks were coming in, and we were getting, or at least I was getting, bombarded with, I didn't get my stimulus check. Can you please check with the Department of Labor and find out where it is? So I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those. I'm sitting there for hours on end calling the Department of Labor. It's ringing, it's ringing, it's ringing. Guess who got laid off? Department of Labor. So guess who was the group that took early retirement during COVID? The old folks, right? Because we were the most likely to get COVID. So before the vaccine was available, you all recall, the elderly and the older folks were the most at risk. So tons and tons of state workers who were over 70 or 65 said, I'm just going to retire. I don't need this grief. We lost a whole generation. Well, guess, you're not going to believe this, and in fact, half of you won't even know what this word means. Guess what computer program the state of Connecticut uses? COBOL. Anybody even know what COBOL is? You do. Okay, well, guess what? I'm hiring you because
No one was left that knew how to do it.
There were no job advertisements
Right.
for COBOL programs.
Right.
And I would have signed up so quickly,
See-
but we have to go through that weird state process.
Yes. So nobody knew how to run the show because the old people had all retired or taken early retirement, and all the systems kept crashing, constantly crashing because nobody was young enough to know how to deal with COBOL. I mean, old enough to know. So then it's like, okay, let's ramp up, let's hire. That's what happens when your taxes, the excuse of lowering taxes is used to reduce the roles of state workers. Yes, there's some deadwood. Yes, there's some malfeasance. Yes, there's some people who just do nothing all day long. But the vast majority of people I know in state service work really hard. And there just weren't enough of them to help during COVID. So that's what comes of laying people off because of taxes. It's
And we
really
haven't
that simple.
recuperated from it yet, and it's really, really hard, especially, we're having trouble getting workers now, but we started, a lot less. But it's like, I think, we can make a difference in our town. Ask our Board of Ed members if they have people show up at a meeting, this many people saying, and I'm just using it as an example, I want to protect the purple beetle in Windsor. Wouldn't that make a difference to you to get a crowd of 30, 40, 50 people that came to you saying, we want our kids to learn about the purple beetle? If we went to the town council and said, we want to protect the purple beetle, and we continued with it for whatever project it is, it would make a difference locally. So then, do we go to Windsor Locks? Does Christine do it in hers? And that's the only way, and we have to move quickly besides all the rest of it. But again, your voice makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Anybody in here a good writer or a journalist or because you can write an op-ed about why do we have the filibuster in Connecticut?
But can I ask you about that?
Yeah, Joe.
Filibustering, just to clarify, looks like about 5% of the bills come out of committee, and relatively successfully amount of the 5% get voted because of the Democratic majority.
Yes.
So the filibustering happens in committee process, correct?
No, excuse me. It happens on the floor of the House after the committee advances it to the Speaker's office and the Speaker decides to raise it. And there's so many steps.
But we know that filibuster, by the time it hits the floor or is going to hit the floor, we know it's going to happen, usually.
And there's a little bit of filibustering that happens in committee meetings, but usually the chairs say, okay, let's
But
go.
even a regular bill that they're all for,
Yeah.
they'll filibuster for 2 to 3 hours.
About 5% from the committee, roughly, what you said.
Yeah.
Is that an acceptable number in your mind, or your mind, both yours? It sounds really low, but.
Well,
If we didn't have the filibuster, we could pass a lot more, Joe. That's what it is.
so a lot of the bills that die are really silly bills. So some years ago, I introduced a bill to require the teaching of climate change in all of our public schools. About half of our schools teach it and half didn't. And there was no uniformity. So when I introduced that bill, Representative John Piscopo, who represents a couple of towns in the northwestern part of the state, introduced a bill to eliminate the teaching of climate change in all of our schools. So that's one of the 3,000 bills that didn't go anywhere. The chair said, get out of
What
here.
about the mechanics of it all? I mean, like what Eric said, I don't think the system's broken. I think you need a new speaker.
Right. I'll disagree with you.
I really like our speaker. I mean, I don't want to go, I don't want this to come down to, I'm against my speaker, because I'm not. I disagree about allowing endless debate. I do. And he knows
In my
that.
history of watching the legislature, he is the best speaker they've ever had. He's fair, and he listens. He does listen. He doesn't have his own agenda, usually. He's listening, but again, that's why your voice matters. He has to hear it. The leadership has to hear it. The committee chair has to hear it.
So
The
if
voice matters.
So, I'm sorry.
Do you want to go, Beth, and then Roberta?
Well, first of all, thank you, Representative Palm, for doing the presentation. It is exactly like Jean explained to me all last year. I met you in the Senate last spring.
She was one of the leads
Oh,
in
about the witch.
exoneration.
Oh,
Yes.
yay.
But
Witch bill.
so, having gone through that experience, I completely understand what you're saying, and I'm understanding more why the ranking people were just spewing one idiotic thing after another. My concern with the way that process is how to counter all the disinformation that they're spewing when they're doing that. I think Representative Garibay did a great job with that with ours, and that we had outside press conferences. And I'm wondering if there's something else. But beyond that, having gone through that experience, it is so important that people participate. And not everybody has to be there in person because it's really, really time consuming. And a lot of people can't do it because we work. But when a bill or resolution is in a committee and it's coming up for testimony, sending written testimony at that time allows you to send testimony for every single environmental bill there, if you agree with it, and maybe just show up for the bigger ones that are your higher priority. But it's really important, and if you know, I guess you just have to listen to these people spew this disinformation, but at the same time, you can overcome them by numbers and by those letters.
To give you an example though, Beth, last year in 2022, I brought out an aging bill, right? I think we were 3 hours in and they were filibustering me and they were being aggressive in all these different questions, and I'm there. Then they accused me and they said, this 600-page bill, it was 16 pages.
Yeah.
Only came to us this morning. We never knew what was in this. And they go on and on and on. And it got to the point where one of my leaders, I thought, he went across the room, I thought he was gonna like get into an altercation with them because it was just so ridiculous. And thanks to Kathy Abercrombie, who was the representative from Meriden, she came over to me and she says, do you have proof that you've been communicating with your ranking member? And I said, yes, here's my phone, all the text, he was away. And on there, I passed everything by him, every change, everything. So they go over, we're at ease for about a half hour, I don't know if you remember it, and they're over there talking and they're all like, you know, whatever. And it comes back, I can't contradict them, I can't stand up and say, you're a freaking liar, it's only 16 pages. You can't do that because then they're gonna kill your bill. So it is a difficult situation, and Connecticut's not the only one that has the filibuster. We have the filibuster at the national level, only they set the time, it's gonna be an 8-hour filibuster, and they all go home and go to sleep and whatever, and then go back. We stay there, and we listen to it. So,
And you've seen, you know, movies, or maybe some of you have seen it in real life, of the English Parliament screaming and going, ah, and throwing papers at each other. Which I so wish we could do. But Jane's absolutely right. We're not even allowed to use the person's name. So we can say, my good colleague from Windsor makes a point, but you can't say what that guy said wasn't true. And you're also, you must hew only to the bill. So you can't use an anecdote if it doesn't have to do exactly with the bill language. So there are these very, very strict rules. We're not allowed to clap, and we're not allowed to boo.
yeah.
Yep. And we're not allowed to roll our eyes.
I know, I did at the very end, I didn't
I
say
just
that.
close my eyes because I can't make them not roll.
I didn't say that it was 16 pages, but I held it up and you could see how thin it was, and I said, this is a very good bill. It was the only thing I could get away
Good
with.
thinking.
Why can't you even say it is a 16-page bill? Like, that makes no
Because you're making them look bad and you're calling them a liar, which they
But they're
are.
making you look
Yeah,
bad.
they should look bad.
But they're lying about you.
I just can't call them a liar.
It's just the way it is.
They should
Call
look bad.
politics. Support, I'd like to bring Michelle on the road. I'm a member of the Greater Hartford Windsor Climate Action Alliance, which is the idea, and it's about 50.
Can you talk a little bit louder, Roberta?
It's about 50 different church communities, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and they come together for social justice. And you probably, as legislators, have seen some of their.
Yes.
They meet with people one-on-one, they garner support. When there's a bill that's being presented, they activate this group of people, and they all show up at the Capitol, and they've had really good success passing these things. If you took this show on the road and you had groups like this in multiple communities, when you have a bill, call on this group of people who you've already cultivated ahead of time, and then you just.
Yes, that's.
Why do you
that's the
think
way to do
tolls
it.
didn't pass? I'll say that most Democrats were for some kind of tolls. They took the show on the road, they went to every town. And you know what, I don't know if Democrats would act the same if we were in the minority. I can't tell you that. I just know they took the show on the road and they put out
The
misinformation.
Republicans did that.
I'm trying not to say the word.
Might as well be honest.
Everyone knows. But They did, and we did not do a good job of messaging. We did not do a good job of messaging. And it became this hot potato. That's one, how many hours did we go with that? And then the bill just died. But Suzanne, and then I'll come back over here, because,
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how we can filter this down so it's really fast, so someone like me can post on my Facebook page. I have about over 3,000 BFFs on Facebook. And I also post on the local bulletin board about things that are important to me. So I'm not going to sign petitions anymore if I'm clogging your mailbox, your email box. So the best thing to do is to go to the state website, hit bulletin, look at the bills, and if there's one that I feel strongly about, like that's pro-environment, email Jane personally saying, I'm in support of this, this is why 372.
but from you with your voice, not a standard writing.
Right, but what I can do is simply say this on the Connecticut, on the Windsor Bulletin Community Board. This is how you get things done if you're concerned about the environment. And I would have no problem with saying, I'm for this bill, and putting it on my own Facebook page. That way, that will take me less than 10
Yes.
minutes. It will take me 5 minutes to do.
That would be great.
So that's how I understand it. If everyone in this group did that, just took 5 minutes, go to the state, go to the page's bulletin, scan the bills that are important.
Agenda, it's called agenda, and then it tells what's.
Agenda
Yep.
and then bulletin, then
Yep.
go to Jane, 3 lines in your own voice.
And remember that it's human nature to complain about what you don't like. And so if you're having a meal at a restaurant, how many people call the chef out just to say, this is the most fabulous meal I've ever had? You expect to get a good meal, right?
Right.
It's when the meal is bad that you call the guy out and yell at him. So most of the voices we hear are anti-bill. Don't pass this. Don't, all that thing with the yellow that I highlighted in yellow, I forget what that was now, but it was don't pass this bill. So what happens then is, if Jane and I really did exactly what the majority of our constituents told us to do based on who contacted us, we would often be voting against things that we don't, we would be voting against things we believe in. So
The negative is out there more than the positive.
Yes, therefore, sometimes it's really good just to write, I'm in favor of this bill. You don't have to even write, just please pass such and such a bill. Because when I say to folks, I wish you had told me, they say, well, of course I'm in favor of that bill. You know that. I'm like, but I can't prove it. I have to be able to show the rest of my committee, the leadership, blah, 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 that there's this whole group tonight. Jane and I can go back and say, oh my God, we had 50 people who want to get rid of the filibuster. There's no proof. So you must write in with what you want, not just what you don't want. Because the haters are the ones who write in with what they don't want.
And that's also, I know those that are my constituents on my state page, some of you are on my personal page too, but on my state page, there's a couple of trolls, local people that are trolls. I know Judy goes out, and it's not about attacking them, even though I would love to, but it's saying something positive about the post. Because it'll be a post about the environment, and they're talking about my vote on social justice, even though one of them was a felon.
Right.
Seriously. And it's like, but those positive remarks puts their remarks down on the bottom and makes it a friendlier place. So anyone, whoever your legislators are, whether it's myself or Miriam Kahn or Doug McCrory, that helps us if you feel up to it. They don't usually go after people that make positive comments on there. They only go after me.
Well, I started a Pinterest board that is called Eclectic Connecticut. And I use it to promote my art, and I have all these divisions. I even have a board underneath Eclectic Connecticut for Windsor, for the town of Windsor. So feel free to post something pro-environment because Pinterest, the posts don't go down, is compound interest. Someone looks at it, and wants to share it, even if they aren't in Connecticut. It's the only the social media program where it's compound interest and your post doesn't die. So there's all these little tricks you can do, including.
And so that's why you need to join the Action Climate. You have a group here in Windsor that is willing to work towards this, but they can use more people, more force, and it's an avenue of working on that here in Windsor to move us forward. And it's very daunting. And when we get together and we're talking, and the new report yesterday, and you had told me about a previous one, it is happening 10 times faster than what they thought it was going to do. We are there. In the next year or two, we're already there a little bit, but it is happening now where we can't go back, that we will not be able to go back. So that's why it is important. And again, your voice matters.
Are there any celebrities in the state who could help show up and speak on the state capitol pro-environment? Are there anyone you can draw upon?
That's a great question, and I've been very dismayed about that because we do have any number of wonderful of celebrities, but I think they just don't want the paparazzi and stuff. I want to talk to Maria Horn because one of our colleagues has like 90% of them in her district.
She does. She does. The gentleman.
Yeah, actually I have a comment and then a question too. I remember years ago, there was a bill, and it was open to public comment, and it was actually televised. And I don't know if any of you remember that from years ago. And so this is public comment, comes on television, and the first people we see come out, they're beautifully dressed, they say, I work with so-and-so in the state legislature. I know this person, and he's a wonderful person. We're saying this is supposed to be public commentary. What's going on? And the newspaper, I remember the Hartford Courant reported on it. And they said, what happens is these people are paid, and they go out and they find homeless people to take their place in line. They pay them to be first in line, and second in line, and third in line. And then when they open it up to public comment, they go over and take their place.
I haven't seen that.
Well, so first of all, it's a lottery. I'm not saying that that didn't happen. Maybe it's changed since then, but it used to be that you had to physically wait in line to
sign up.
To sign up. And people would pay others to stand in line for them. That is true. However, the speaker's order is a lottery. It's not first come, first serve. It's first come, first serve in terms of signing up. But the thing that really bothers me is that state employees, legislators, DEP commissioner get to go first.
The first hour, though, just the first hour.
For the first hour, but then they alternate.
Yeah.
With a member of the public. So what another tactic that is used is that the naysayers will ask the same question of the public officials, like Katie Dykes, who's the commissioner of the environmental protection. They'll ask the same question and keep her there forever, and then they eat up a whole hour with her. Then Eric gets to speak, but he only gets 3 minutes. Then they go back to Katie Dykes for another hour. And then Susie Jones gets bored and leaves, and then Katie Dykes is on for her 3rd hour, and then Joe Schmidlap goes home, ticked off. And I see this happen over and over and over again. And I believe the members of the public should go first. I mean, if you're being paid, or you ran for office and chose to be up there, you shouldn't go first, you should go last.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Great idea.
So they're still gaming the system then?
Yeah.
Now, I'm also wondering, can you just give us some idea of what's in that 10-year bill you talked about earlier?
Your carbon bill,
What's
10-year
bill?
Well, it sounds ridiculously simple. It would have done 3 things. It would have created a climate emergency, declared a climate emergency. A climate crisis. The difference being an emergency is a legal term that triggers a whole bunch of stuff, which the Republicans didn't want triggered. In other words, it would have given the governor more authority to do things in times of, dire flood. Well, I think he should have power in times of people flooding. He should be able to do it by fiat, but like with COVID. So it would have declared a climate crisis, which is more of a symbolic thing to get people to pay attention. That was hours and hours of watering that down because that word was too scary. It would have required state agencies, all state agencies, to assess their own carbon footprint and give real concrete steps toward what are you going to do about it, because we did pass, before Jane and I were elected in the 80s, they passed something called the Global Warming Solutions Act. And there were metrics for carbon reduction. By 2022, it's going to be, I don't know them off the top of my head, 17% less. And by 2033, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. We're nowhere near meeting them, nowhere near. The state of Connecticut is nowhere near. So this would have been a roadmap which would have held all the state agencies' feet to the fire to tell the Environment Committee and the legislature, how are you going to reach that goal? Like, we all do this right every day. Like, I need to save $1,000 to buy myself that new thingy. How am I going to get there? Well, I'm going to do X, do Y, do Z. And then the third thing it would have done was to create a working group of citizens, environmentalists, members of the industry, I almost said the military industrial complex, the manufacturing world, to work together on ideas. That's what it would have done, and that was too controversial. So that last third, the working group, that was where I said earlier I put 2 amendments on, because the Republican colleague, the ranking member on the committee, wanted me to spell out a member of the plastics industry, a member of the tire industry, and I did. The working group was this big. And then they wanted only 3 members of the public, but 3 members of the tire group and 3 members of the plastic, and I said, no, because...
That's 9 against 3.
Yeah, and it went on. So that was 2 weeks of arguing and negotiating and horse trading. And I'll be honest, any of you who've paid attention to the bear bill, the black bear, the bear hunting, is that a thing? Do you guys have a bear problem out here?
Yeah.
We don't have a problem, we have bears.
We have bears. You have a bear issue. So.
Not even a bear issue, we have bears.
We have bears.
We can live
so
with
the
our
bear
bears.
bill was a big deal. And to my undying chagrin, it's going to be on my epitaph. My biggest regret is I was part of a deal. In order to get my carbon bill across the finish line, I agreed to help get the bear bill across the finish line. I had to flip, I'm sure I came to you, I had to flip 60 of my colleagues from a no to a yes.
I wasn't a no, so.
Okay. I sufficiently watered the bill down so it simply said, if you're being attacked by a bear, you can kill it, which I think you should be able to do. If you come home and find a bear in your house, you should be able to kill it if you can. Throw a knife at it. And it would allow farmers to apply for a permit so that they could shoot it if it was attacking their flock or their honeybees or whatever. So common sense, like you should already be able to do that. It did not allow a hunting lottery, which is what the Republicans wanted. They wanted people to be able to go into the woods, seek out the bears and shoot them, including in their dens as they were
Including with little baby bears like in Newtown.
So I successfully, long story short, I watered the bill down to the point where I could live with it, most of my colleagues could live with it. It was part of the horse trading, and I said to them, please vote yes on this bear bill, which we all hate, in order for us to then have the carbon bill and this other bill called environmental justice, which says that if you live in a poor community, you cannot be overburdened. Usually black and brown communities, but not always, also some predominantly white rural communities. They get all the crap put into their district.
The garbage.
They would never dare put in an incinerator plant in Essex. People in Essex wouldn't put up with it. I represent Essex. I don't believe that because my town won't take it, I should stick it in Waterbury. So I worked with the Waterbury State Rep, Jerry Reyes, and we did this bill together. So the deal was, okay, Pam, you get the bear bill across the finish line, and we'll get you these other 2 bills across the finish line. And like an idiot, I did my part of the deal first. I got the bear bill across. And then suddenly, well, we're having second thoughts, and well, and the carbon bill never got raised in the Senate. So that's discouraging. Yes, people game the system. I'm older and wiser.
But it's
I
like the
won't make that
moose up at
mistake
the
again.
airport that they shot. It was a young, what are they called, calves, I think, young moose. And they said that they were afraid it would go out onto the runway, so they shot it, deep shot it. I talked to my liaison up at the airport. It was 2 fences in. He said there was no way it would have ever have made it out to a runway, and they shot and killed it.
P.S. What kind of an animal can not, the airplane wins.
I know.
I'm sorry.
But he couldn't even make it was a lie. They were, either they didn't want the expense of, shooting a dart and carrying, relocating him or whatever.
Let me ask a question on that. I know in the beginning of session, you have thousands of bills that get proposed. And it's really hard as a regular person to go into and look at every one of those bills. They're hard to read a lot of times anyway.
Yep.
Is there a way for you to alert us?
Yes.
Like to say, please show up for this one?
Yes, so great question, that's a really important thing. So I have these little files that I have my assistant help. If you care about bears, you're in that file. If you care about Aiden dying, if you care about protecting teachers during COVID, and then when those bills come up, I activate those people by saying, hey, there's a bill coming up you might want to pay attention to. So, yes.
How do you get the different, like I'm mostly interested in aging, I'm a nurse's aide, and I'm taking care of elderly people.
We can mark the sheet over there where you signed in, and if you said aging, right?
Right.
And you leave your email and cell phone, I can reach out to you for that. We're gonna do the drawing now.
I just wanted to also, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I'm also on the American Cancer Society as a volunteer. My mother and sister both died of ovarian years ago before age 50. But, and I also have a Relay for Life family team. But we went to the Capitol before COVID and about raising the age for cigarette smoking. Or do I want to say raise? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that high school teens wouldn't be smoking too early. So and it's still trying to be passed to raise.
So that bill would come under the Public Health Committee, not aging.
And this year, it's only committee bills, so it's harder, but next year, if you have an idea and you reach out to us, whoever your legislator is, we can put through a bill for something that you're concerned about.
Can I just ask real quick, if Jane is not, are there people in this room for whom Jane is not the state rep?
Yeah, well, I'm
Is it
from
you?
East Windsor.
Oh, okay. So is it Miriam Khan?
Would be for them, and Doug McCrory is everything in Windsor
He's
except for
senator,
the north.
So who's your state rep in East Windsor?
We're not East Windsor.
No, but
No, she said she's from East Windsor.
Jamie,
I'm from East
Jamie Foster.
Oh, okay, okay. So you let Jamie Foster know your interests, and she will put you, well, I can't speak for her,
Windsor.
I hope.
Most
You know,
legislators.
When we went to the Capitol, we all went to different reps
Yep,
to talk about the cigarette age. And a lot of them weren't in their offices,
yeah.
which was hard.
Well, email is the best way to reach us. We all read our email, it's the very best way.
Right.
And I'll tell you guys, guess how many emails or phone calls we need to get before it starts to feel like kind of a groundswell. Pardon?
4. I'll say 4.
7. 7's the magic number. If we get 7 emails, we go, wow, this is a
7
trend.
personal emails?
I don't know why that is. That's so
7 personal emails. So before Jane does the, there's still a couple of comments out there?
A couple of, Judy, and then back
Yeah.
again.
I might duck out before you do this, if I may, unless you really want me to stay. You can.
We want to do these emails, and I'm going to send an email to Jane
but does it do anything to copy you, or is it an environment thing, whoever's?
I think what she was saying is if it comes to me, if I'm your rep, and I would send it to her if it has to do with the environment, or just like I'm jane.garibay@cj.ct.gov, she's Christine's.
Same formula. But if you're willing to testify on a bill, you don't have to be my constituent to do that, by any means. So this is great for me, because even though you can't vote for me, you can come and help me support my bills, which would be awesome.
And you can email them, so she
Yeah.
says, hey, I got 50 emails in total support of this issue.
Yeah.
And
So
it's-
folks, I'm going to duck out while you do this fun
Okay,
thing.
there's one more question
Oh,
in the
all right.
back, and then
But
I'll
I-
let you go.
Leah.
You can go now, because
Who's going to vote against your grandparents? Who's going to vote against your kids and your grandchildren?
They don't see it that way.
But
So-
it needs to be brought up.
So there are people that don't believe the facts that we believe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one of them. And when you consider, we made noise in aging because people are literally dying. Every day, people are dying. If I told you the stories, you would go home and have nightmares. We are in a crisis. If I were the governor, I would name this, I would say this is a crisis. And we would make total change. Meanwhile, we got to work through the system. Progress has been made. We passed good bills with the support of my colleagues. So that's literally what people are saying. People are dying. And the more people see, I lobby just like you do with my fellow representatives, because I got someone that they crashed him in his Hoyer lift. Guess who got the video? I went to Matt Ritter, sat down with him, this is what I'm seeing, and I'll just give two examples because they're horrific. One, in a town nearby, he was supposed to be on soft foods, and they fed him regular foods and left the room, and he asphyxiated. They were declaring it a heart attack. The ambulance came, but he hadn't actually died, so when they got there, they went to intubate him, and they found the food. Otherwise, he would have died, and they would have said it's a heart attack. Or another where they put the oxygen mask on, he was having trouble breathing, they leave the room, they come back, the man's dead. Why? They forgot to turn on the oxygen.
Oh, Jesus.
But these are people also being paid $15 an hour. These are people that are being required to work double 16 hours a day. And I'm not taking the excuse that we don't have workers, because I see companies here in Windsor like TLDACE, and some of you have heard me talk about them. They have their own certification program. They promote from within. They have Employee of the Month with a little bonus. They take care of their employees. So we need nursing homes, but that's what legislators, so when you weigh, the environment, well, the sky looks blue to me, but here we have people dying, or you're Jillian Gilchrist in Human Services, and the sex.
There's not enough help. I mean, my nursing home, we're always short-handed.
Right, but some of them, you hear me out, I didn't say it today, the ratio. Hi, Christine. Christine. My sister told me what to do, I do what she says.
Goodbye, you guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. And before Jane does the raffle, I do want to say, everybody, if you really want to participate and you want to be a part of what Windsor Climate Action is doing here in town and in the state, please sign your name and give us your information, and we'll reach out to you. And we are on Facebook as well, so, yeah.
Yeah, make sure you sign that list. But just so you know, for nursing, an 80-chain nursing home, he draws $400,000 a year from each one of those nursing homes. He owns 3 or 4 of the auxiliary companies, meaning the landscaping company, the food provider, the washing. And I know some of you hear me rant about this, but they own that. They also pay their wife, their son, a friend, a salary, but they don't actually work there. And the transparency bill that we passed last year, they have to declare that in a one sheet. They will try to skirt around it, but now it will be illegal. If they lie, it will be illegal. So, everything is just so much more complicated than it is, but we feel an urgency with the climate, because it's not going to matter how good our nursing homes are if we don't have a world to have those nursing homes. So,
Before you do that, can I just say thank you from all of us for the time that you put in?
I will tell her, thank you. We live in our communities, it's different than Washington, right? It really is different. So anyways, but I appreciate that, and thank you. You know, living in this community, you are my peeps, you know, all of you, whether you're in my district or not. So anyways, but I want to say, because I knew that we were being environmentally conscious, we tried not to use plastic, we did not buy bottled water, and these are things that you can do every day at home, which is just a little thing. And I just want to commend our Board of Education for coming and listening. Is really important to know.
Green schools, green schools.
The first item, it is from recycled items. Our artist is right over here, Suzanne Irvin. Raise your hand, Susan. It's a clothespin, and it is so darn cute, with a button that says "Waste Not, Want Not," and a little like ornament. Do you want to draw? We just wanted.
Get your numbers.
Good.
That's 4 numbers, 6117.
Oh, come get. Yay. There's a bag over there too, if you want to put it in. I just had to show that. Okay.
Oh, this is so cute.
I wasn't going to show things, but I'm so happy with everything. A little bee gnome from the Blue Dragonfly, and it comes with its little
6120.
6120.
Little's got it.
I was really excited about these, the beeswax food wraps. They're now selling at Copy Central on Pequannock Avenue.
Good, yeah.
If you know what those are, you hold them to the... Gotta get one on the other side.
6133.
6133.
They left. That's why they take names.
You snooze, you lose.
I was one away.
Wonderful.
Mm. 6129. Oh, it's me.
You get organic maple syrup. What was this one? Oh, we were supposed to pick another one for this, right?
Oh, well.
We'll wait till the end.
All right, come around again. Yum.
A soy candle.
6132.
Colette, woohoo! Can you tell I like gnomes?
They're cute. Come on down.
Another bottle of organic syrup.
Very cute.
As Mimi can tell you, it's not only organic syrup, it's kosher. 6121. Oh, that's me.
What was that? They're having too much fun.
Who knows what they're doing back there? You know, they're back in the class, kids.
You guys were just called back of the class kids.
This is the last one?
Create.
Woo! Who is it?
Amelia?
Amelia. Just one last time, will our elected officials, because some of you scooted in, stand up and thank you for taking the time to hear our voice. Yes. Thank you for taking the time. You guys are busy out there right now, and to take the time to come and listen. No, thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane.
No. Thank you, Susan and Liz. And don't forget to use your washer sheets and try them out. Yep, those are from Paula and I. There's Paula.